And so when you can take their sort of nebulous requirements and turn it into something that's meaningful, I mean, and our one project that we've worked on so far has been really enlightening because we've built some things based on what we thought the customer's requirements were, and they've loved it, right? It's like, well, we weren't even anticipating that, but you gave us something that was even better. That's been super satisfying, right, to see that, because you're like, hey, they didn't even know really what they wanted. We built something cool because of what we know and how to build software and all those things, and turned into something that people love.
All right.
Welcome to Elevate Utah.
Utah's #1 growth podcast.
I'm Court Brady.
I am Carlos Souza.
And today we have Aaron Pace and Jason Chandler. Stoked to have you guys.
We're excited to be here, more or less.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Quick introduction. You guys have both been in the tech space, both software developers, friends since how long?
7th grade. Well,
Yep.
I guess 8th grade, technically.
We met in 7th grade.
Yeah.
We didn't really become friends.
Yeah.
Right.
We had to sort of suss out the nerdiness level, I think.
Yeah.
And that turned out it matched.
It did. It turned out, yeah. It's a good nerd match.
One of you rented out How to Win Friends and Influence People from the library, and then the other one showed up to also rent it out. It's like, oh, we should be buddies.
You know, I'm going to tell a funny story. So there's a third guy involved in the business, and his name's Clifton. And literally how we became friends is we were at church together, and I overheard him talking to somebody about how he had to format his hard drive after church that day. We became instant friends. No joke. That's exactly how we met. So, and then he introduced me to my wife a year later. So I owe a lot to him. So.
Right outside this office, we have Clint and Jason, and they're working on their tech startup. And I'm dressed in basketball shorts and a hoodie every single day. And I've mentioned StarCraft once, and instantly I gained like 10 more respect points from the two of them.
Absolutely.
Guys, oh, go ahead.
That was the game. I mean,
It was the game.
98, and we were just playing StarCraft all the time.
Well, we're pumped. You guys are both leaving corporate jobs to go and start a company together, and you're going to do custom software development for supply chain, for logistics. Correct me on any of this that I'm wrong on. And we wanted to get a pre-entrepreneurial journey episode done so that we could have you guys back in 2 to 5 years and talk about it on the other side.
I'm hoping we get to that point before 2 to 5 years, but you know, I know the realistic timelines of a lot of things. So yeah, you're right on. I mean, that's what we're doing. Is our primary focus right now is on building custom software solutions for distribution businesses, and we're also working on they call it an enterprise resource planning system, ERP, and we're building a full ERP system that is analytics first. So a lot of big legacy softwares, they don't have analytics front and center. And you know, we live in such a data-driven world today that people need to have that information right up front so they can make good decisions. But analytics on almost every platform that we've seen, it really is, you got to go someplace else, so you're interrupting your workflow to go and get the answers to your questions. And so we're taking an approach of bringing that front and center to really streamline how those distribution businesses operate.
Why the distribution business? Is that background, your guys' background, or you just the opportunity seems?
So no, that's my background for sure. I mean, I cut my teeth. My very first big kid job was in distribution, working in a warehouse. So I did everything in the distribution business, from delivery driver and order picker all the way up to business owner and everything in between. Done forensic accounting, written software for distribution businesses in the past. And so, yeah, for me, I mean, I've been in it for 25 years, and it's just, I don't know, people say I'm really nerdy, but I love distribution. I love the science of moving boxes. And so that's really what this is about for us.
I love it.
So. Yeah, and I mean, I really enjoy the developing software part of it. So I've been in a lot of different companies, a lot of different spaces as I've developed software, but I'm learning all this new stuff about distribution. It's all new to me, but working together, as he's got that side of it and I've got the development side of it, and it's working so far.
Have you guys always wanted to work together? Like, has this been a dream since you were in the 7th grade, or when?
Maybe not that far back, but we have talked about it for a long time. Like, I do remember even back maybe 10, 12 years ago, trying to think, is there a job at my current company that I can get Aaron into, and trying to find ways that we could work together. So it's been a long time that we've been talking about it, and even this specific business, it's been a conversation for 4 or 5 years. So it does take a while sometimes to get things going, and for the opportunities to present themselves and be just right.
So now that you guys are diving in, do you wish you would have started earlier? Are you a little hesitant, and now that you've got your feet wet a little bit, saying, well, maybe we should actually wait a couple more years? Tell us about what timing feels like.
You want to take that one first?
Yeah, sure. It's somehow both at the same time, I guess, right? You're looking back and you think, we probably could have figured this out sooner. But then you see how certain things happen at certain times, and you think, okay, it's no use for us to kind of look back and look at regrets or whatever. We are in our mid-40s, and that's, I don't know, maybe late for some people to talk about being entrepreneurs, but I think it's the right thing for us, and I think it's going to work out. So I'm happy about it, how it's worked out so far.
And part of it too that's been really interesting for me as we've contemplated this is the network of folks that I've been introduced to over the last many years they've really become super critical to our success, and those are people that I wouldn't have met had we not kind of gone along this this path. And so it helped me to establish a lot of relationships that we're working with a bunch of people right now who are receptive to what we're doing because they know who I am and what I can do. And so I've had opportunities to present in front of groups of some of these people that we're now targeting as customers for our business. And so that's, super valuable, right? And again, we wouldn't be where we are today had I not had those experiences. So it's hard to say, probably couldn't have started this any sooner than we are now.
Do you have your first customer?
We do.
Do you have your second?
Technically we do have our second customer. So we've got technically right now 4 customers.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That is incredible.
The first one's always the hardest.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, one of those has been a long time. I've been really good friends with the CEO of the company and then the general manager. We've been friends for, since 2013, I guess. And they're back on the East Coast, and I've kept in touch with them over the years. And so I've had lots of opportunities to work with them. In fact, I worked for their company full time for about a year while we were getting the solar business that I've been involved in for the last 7 years up and running.
Tell us about what was the inception of this idea? What was the first conversation with you guys like? How long has this specific venture been in the works?
So yeah, I think the first conversation that we had about this probably goes back to 2019. So 2019 is when we organized the business officially, and then we did nothing with it after that. But you talk about having a chip on your shoulder, and I was in a space where I just really wanted to do something different. And I've been talking about doing something different for a long time. Even before I got involved with a bunch of other things. So this does go back to 2009 for me. And I started a little business called Distribution Inventory Management.
Which is the same business that you're about to start, right? Same space?
Essentially the same space, yeah. But I was only going to be focused on consulting for distribution businesses. And so obviously with this one, we're taking more of a focus on custom software development and that sort of thing. But so I started this little business, but it was at the same time that I met my current business partner, and so we've been working together now for for about 15 years. But as I met him, it was at the same time I was starting this little distribution business. So my intention was I was going to go out and do consulting for distribution companies, and I ended up going to work full time at a janitorial supply wholesale company that I ran with that partner for 7 years, and then we sold that and started a solar company focused primarily in the agricultural space, and that's what we've been doing for the last 8 years. So, but yeah, I had that in mind for a long time, and because I ended up going to work full time for him, I didn't pursue it anymore. But Jason and I had our first conversations about insights development, in 2019, and that's when we organized the company. But it's taken us until now to really get serious about it and move forward. And really, it took I bid on a software project that I really had no business bidding on, but I thought I'm going to do it anyway. And I was familiar with the ownership of that company as well. So I bid on it and they gave me the project. And so my original thought was I'm just going to outsource the development to some offshore developers. And then Clifton, who I referenced before, actually lost his job, and he's been in development for 25 years. And he interviewed with a bunch of companies, didn't get hired. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do this domestically. I'm going to bring in two of my best friends, and we're going to build this thing together. And so that started in October of last year. I won the bid on the software in June, didn't touch it until October. And so that became sort of the first customer. And so then it was at that point reaching out to Jason and saying, okay, I've got us a customer. Now we got to get really serious about insights and where we're going to take this thing. And so here we are. It's almost accidental entrepreneurship.
So what happened in the interim? I'm curious, from 2019 to 2024 June, when you won that bidding. Why did you guys? Why were things on pause for that period? Was there hesitation, or just you guys were still brainstorming? What happened in the interim?
I mean, life happened, I suppose, right? It's when you're looking at trying to start something, but you have a full-time job and a full-time family and all the other requirements that go with that, it's easy to talk yourself out of jumping into it, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was really easy for us to say, oh, this is cool and we definitely want to do this and we're probably going to start on this pretty soon. And then the time just goes by. So I think there was a lot of that where we just sort of were comfortable in not really diving all the way in.
So, and yeah, on my side too, I mean, all of that is certainly true. And then I think financial stability was the thing that was, my wife craves financial stability probably more than anything. And, we kept looking towards this horizon of, okay, well, can we make this work? And, our kids are getting older. We've got one that's about to get married. And so we've got two in college. And I mean, it's a busy time of life, right? And so, yeah, like Jason said, I mean, it was just literally life getting in the way over and over again. And it was easy to put it on the back burner because we didn't really have anything serious or concrete to work on. And so I don't even know why I decided to throw my hat in the ring on that software project that came up in June. But, I, just decided almost on a whim, really. And here we are, we're working on this thing together and looking at other opportunities related to that same company and with other companies. But yeah, I'll probably repeat the phrase accidental entrepreneurship a number of times while we're talking. So
you just decided to roll that snowball off the edge.
Yeah, exactly.
And now it's rolling and there's not much you can do about it once it gets going.
I think two things are really interesting. One, accidental entrepreneurship happens quite frequently, I believe. Mm-hmm. We talk about this process if someone says, I want to be an entrepreneur, and the process isn't, I want to be an entrepreneur, now let me go find an idea. Sometimes people try and go down that path of what's the idea, and I want to be an entrepreneur. But that's far less likely. What's way more likely is here's this opportunity, the stars have aligned, and now we can go on this adventure. We always talk about Lord of the Rings. I always talk about Lord of the Rings because I freaking love Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that.
Perfect. Yeah,
I found
I'm outnumbered.
But how do you, if you're Bilbo or Frodo, how do you prepare? Like you can't expedite this process. Mm-hmm. You can just be ready when that knock comes on your door and say yes.
And ready with a question mark because you're not really ready, right? You just have to take the leap of faith.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Jason, when Aaron gave you the call and said, hey, we won this bid, where were you at? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, it was a little surprising. Because, I mean, I knew that he was doing a lot of his own stuff sort of on the side, right? He had various people that he was working with. And he'd always kind of kept up on that, and I'd hear about it, and we'd chat about it sometimes. And he'd throw a problem, say, "Hey, I'm really fighting with this thing. You got any ideas and stuff?" But there hadn't been really one of these like big set a project with a really large footprint that needed to get done. So it was kind of interesting, and I was a little surprised, but I felt ready to go. So it worked out great. We were like, okay, let's dive in. It's easier to dive in when you got a really concrete thing set like that. He's like, I've got this project. They want to pay us this amount of money. They want it to be done by this date. And I'm like, great, let's do it. Let's go.
So cool. Okay, guys, can we talk a little bit about what you're super pumped about and what you might be a little nervous of? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, let's start with, what are you guys most excited for?
Man, I've got several things that I'm really excited about. And, one we've already mentioned, just working with Jason and Clifton on this thing. And like Jason said before, we've noodled on this idea of working together on something for quite a long time. And because we've had this ongoing friendship since really 8th grade, that the prospect of working with him on this has just been really exciting to me. Having an idea about what we could build and the market potential, and the same customer that we've been working with on building this first software project, has already told us sight unseen, just based on the work that we've done for them so far, that when we have our new solution ready, they'll be the first customer to sign up for it. Now, of course, words are big, right? Talk is cheap. And so it'll be interesting to see when we get this product done if they're really willing to jump on it. They're in the middle of an ERP implementation right now, and they're saying, we'll switch again once you guys have a new product ready. And so I'm really excited to take what we're building to all of these companies. And, that sector is so, I would say, underrepresented in a lot of ways.
From a tech perspective?
From a tech perspective. And because you have a lot of distribution companies in particular that are really slow to adopt new technologies. And, it's like a lot of them don't even have wireless automation in their warehouses. And I mean, how many years has that been around? 30, 40 years where that has been a thing. And a lot of them aren't using it yet. So they're slow to adopt new technologies. And then they find themselves in a position where, like, we have to make a major investment in a new enterprise software package. So what we're offering is something that will potentially come in at a significantly lower price point with a lot of sort of modern stuff, because we're not hung up on the legacy systems, and there's so much bloat in these legacy systems, right? And so there's a real opportunity. Anyway, that's what's super exciting for me, because our customer base is like 800,000 businesses in the United States alone that are in some type of distribution. So we only have to have a really, really small percentage of that to be enormously successful. And that's super appealing to me. The thing that makes me, do you want to go to really nervous?
Well,
or do you want to?
I had something stand out as you were talking, actually connecting 3 different things. First, what you said, Jason, when I said, or Carlos asked, what was in between 2019 and 2024? And you said life happened, and there's just a lot of gravity. It's hard to get out of the atmosphere when there's so much gravity in life. And then you mentioned these distribution services and centers that are pretty antiquated. And I think one thing that stands out is how difficult it is to make change when the pain is not significant. Like when it's okay, but not so bad. When you're working for someone else and it's like, well, I could be doing more on my own, but making pretty good money and it's not so bad. Or these systems that say, we don't have wireless in here, but we're doing it's good enough. This is actually a question for you, Carlos. Being a new CEO in a role, I'm curious if you have any insights on how to artificially move that pain forward so that you can experience how bad things are going to be in the future without making the changes. I feel like this is one of your superpowers, to be able to make changes quicker than I think most people do. And I'm curious if you could share how you do that.
I don't know if I have a question, an answer for that. Yeah, give me a couple of minutes here to think.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Or if either of you have an answer on how do you artificially bring up that pain so that something is bad enough now in the present where you can where it stimulates movement and stimulates action and change rather than waiting for the world to push that on you.
That's something that we're going to have to be dealing with to convince some of these companies that what they need to do is let us help them, right? So it's a great question, and I don't know if I have a great answer either, but I think part of what would help with that is seeing, having a really good view on what the alternative is. You know, for us, when we were letting these years pass by, we probably didn't have a really good view of what it was going to be like to have that alternative, to look and see what's it going to be like if we do decide to write our own story and take that leap and see what happens. And so at least for us moving forward with these companies, I think what we're going to try to do is show them, the way you're doing things is okay. We've got something we want to show you, and you're going to, once you've seen it and you've seen how it can not only change the way you work from day to day, but increase the profitability of what you're doing and whatever other benefits we can show them, I think that's going to make a difference. So
I think that's one of the most difficult things, is to take a latent pain and put it in real time. Mm-hmm. We had a guy on the podcast, Andrew Bagley, who is the president of Bonneville Communications, a marketing company. And he told me that to change smokers, they're trying to change behavior in smokers. And they would bring the smoker in and say, here's what you're going to look like 20 years from now if you didn't smoke. Pretty good looking person, you're now 20, you're now going to be 40. Here's what you're going to look like as a 40-year-old if you continue to smoke. And he said the changes in these people were drastic. And I'm curious, again, from a business perspective, how you can artificially do that to yourself as a CEO or a founder or a partner to bring those pains sooner, so it spurs decision making, so we don't have to wait.
Yeah, and I mean, from my perspective on this thing, to spur the pain for myself is I literally sent a text message to my 2 business partners that I'm currently involved with and told them I was quitting. And so I just have felt nudged in that direction and just decided one morning, really, I didn't even talk to my wife about it. I just decided to pull the trigger one morning, and I'm like, once I have sent that message, I can't change the decision anymore. I can't take it back anymore. If you were to talk to one of my business partners, there's kind of a joke in the office where when things have gotten bad in the past, I've quit. And then we work things out and I stay on. And this has happened literally 5 times in the last 15 years, where I'll leave and come back. Or I don't leave at all. I just say I'm leaving, but then I don't. So when I sent that message, I said, this really, it's the last time. There won't be any take backs on this. I'm moving forward. And then to make it even more real, I went and told all of my employees, like, I'm transitioning away. And fortunately, I work with a couple of really good guys, and I'm going to stay part-time involved, really be part-time involved with what they're doing, because I believe in the mission of their company, but I am really in the space now where I have to do this for myself, right? And you hear that a lot with entrepreneurs, like, this is the thing that keeps me up at night. This is the thing that gets me really excited. I wake up in the morning thinking about it and new ways that we can approach things. And I'm working with a couple of just tremendously gifted programmers right now who can take this noise that I throw out there a lot of time and turn it into really cool stuff. And that is so satisfying for me, because now we're building something for ourselves, right? Something that's going to solve some real problems in the industry that we're focused on right now. So when we talk about bringing that latent pain, to the forefront for our customers, fortunately for us, the legacy systems that exist now are doing a great job of bringing that pain to the forefront, because everybody has moved to the SaaS model, right? It's everybody wants to charge you every month for everything. And the fees have gotten so high that even for these companies that are spending, their revenues $50-60 million a year, they're like, this is painful. It's painful for us to have to pay these fees all the time. And they're just nickel and diming us everywhere. And customer service has gotten bad. A lot of the customer service has been moved overseas. Some of them have moved their entire dev teams overseas. And nothing against those people over there, but it does create a barrier. There's a lot of friction involved in in getting support when you need it. And
Aaron, tell me how you felt after you sent that text. What emotions?
oh man, it was an interesting mix of relief and terror. The relief because I had done it, the terror because my wife was asleep when I sent it. And I knew that when she woke up in the morning, I was going to have to explain to her that I am leaving a pretty comfortable job to start something else. And, she is, I would say, probably in full-time panic mode right now as we're building this thing and trying to figure out how we're going to make things work. And, but it's really exciting. And she recognizes too, and she's actually the one who surfaced the idea, well, you've been making a lot of other people money for a lot of years. Maybe it's time to really do what you've been threatening to do for basically our entire marriage. And we've been married 24 years now. And she's like, you've always talked about this. And I was thinking about kind of my own entrepreneurial journey, which I know we'll kind of get to some of these questions later, but I think that spirit's always been kind of in there somewhere to want to do this. When I was a kid, I would ride my bike to 7-Eleven and buy candy to sell to all my friends, right? I didn't have a concept of profit margin back then, so we would literally sell it at the same price we bought it. So we just became a convenience courier. That's really what we were, right? We could ride our bikes. Our parents would let us ride our bikes that far to buy the candy and bring it back to the kids in the neighborhood. But yeah, it was always break even. We never made any profit on that enterprise. But so I guess it's always been in there since I was little to just, be involved in something like that. So
I've lost count of how many times we've heard that story from guests. They, when they're 8, they would buy, donuts at the end of the day from a donut shop and then next morning sell to their community. I just think it's amazing how many times we've heard that story.
I was having lunch yesterday with a friend, and he was talking about this pull that he felt. He had started this company, was feeling this pull to change the structure, to get into doing something that he loved. And he said, what's your advice? Like, what would you recommend? And my own experience was that I tried all of these other startups, but I had like this pull. I always knew I wanted to do executive and founder consulting and help other people scale their businesses. And I was having a conversation 5 years ago with my brother, and he said, what are you going to do 5 years from now? And I said, hopefully I'm going to be consulting executives and founders on how to grow and scale their businesses. And I think that pull is real. You call it a spirit, whatever it is, it doesn't go away. And I think a lot of people try and keep it away from them and keep it at bay, but eventually that spirit's going to win. And when it does, it's a hard journey, but there's some phenomenal things that are unleashed. Do you guys know who the CEO is? Are you going to be the CEO of the company, or do you guys have a structure?
It's a loose structure, but I would say, yeah, probably CEO and Jason, CTO.
Yeah. You've been a CTO, Aaron, up until now.
Yeah.
What new skill sets are you going to have to adopt as a CEO compared to a CTO?
When you're getting started with something, you wear all the hats, right? And so it's, just managing pretty much all the aspects of the business that are not directly related to the software development side of things. And so, making sure the books are balanced and making sure bills are getting paid. We don't have many of those yet, thankfully, but we do have some. We're paying bills. I'm out, virtually knocking doors to find new opportunities for us, right? And all of those, I used to joke all the time that I went into computers so I wouldn't have to deal with people. And, the truth is, though, I really love dealing with people, but still the idea of sales in kind of an unnatural way, let's say, is scary for me. When I have an opportunity to just get in front of someone, like develop a relationship pretty naturally, then I have no problem talking to them about what we're doing and why I'm excited about it. But to approach someone that I don't know and talk to them about what we're doing and why I'm excited about it, that's really, really hard. And it's hard to push myself out of that comfort zone all the time. But I've had interesting enough opportunities over the years to be able to speak the tech speak, but also talk to people who don't really understand the tech speak. So it's an interesting marriage, right? I can go into a distribution company and I can talk to them in distribution terms, but I can also speak the computer lingo, and I can take it and translate it into the requirements where, as you know, with all of the technical founders you've talked to, a lot of times you're dealing with customers who don't really know exactly what it is they want. And so when you can take their sort of nebulous requirements and turn it into something that's meaningful, I mean, and our one project that we've worked on so far has been really enlightening because we've built some things based on what we thought the customer's requirements were, and they've loved it, right? It's like, well, we weren't even anticipating that, but you gave us something that was even better. That's been super satisfying, right, to see that, because you're like, hey, they didn't even know really what they wanted. We built something cool because of what we know and how to build software and all those things, and turned into something that people love.
And it's kind of interesting, like you like to make jokes about how you're not a people person, and obviously I know that you are. And the idea is, a lot of tech people do struggle with that, right? There's a lot of tech people who get really into tech, and that's sort of the stereotype almost, right? Is that you see, this group of developers, they don't know how to talk to human beings and all this stuff. And there's some people like that, but there's also a lot of people who have both. And I think that's one thing that both of us, I think, do okay at, is that we've got some technical chops, but we do okay talking to people. And I think that's going to be really important as we move forward. Like, as you're saying, what's our jobs going to be like, CEO and CTO? And you can't just focus on the one thing. You got to have all the hats, like you're saying, and you got to be able to take that, the tech part, and marry it with the people skills. And if we end up being able to grow this into a larger company, that's going to become even more important. And it is something that I really actually love to do. I've done a lot of managing developers in different jobs, where I've kind of split my time, where I'm doing a lot of the coding and developing, but I'm also mentoring others and helping them with clearing the way so they can be their most effective selves. And that's something that I really enjoy doing. And I think it'll be interesting as we get further into this, where it's not just like three of us, to see how some of those skills that we both have developed over the years come into use.
I think when we hear the word ability to sell or be a good salesman, we all think of the Wolf of Wall Street, or we have that stereotype. I was actually talking to a friend of mine 2 weeks ago. He was in town from Atlanta, and he's starting his own company, and he told me the same thing. He's like, I just don't enjoy selling. I love operations. I'm a technical guy, so I hired this person to do sales for me. Then I was trying to convince him that that's not the wise. He should be doing sales. So I think, and then the best way that I found to help him understand that was, the best sales people are the ones that are financially aligned with the success of the business, and those that believe in the product. So you might not even like sales or be good at, but you're going to be the best salesman, because no one's better aligned than both of you guys with the success of the business, and no one believes in the product more than you two. So when customers talk to you, even though you don't have nailed down all of those sales, strategies and tactics and abilities, you'll be able to sell because of those two things. It's going to speak for you and in your behalf, and I'm sure you guys are going to do amazing.
That's certainly the hope, right? That the product will speak for itself. That's what every software builder hopes, right? The software is going to sell itself. It's going to be fine. But, we recognize for sure that there's going to be a lot of effort involved in getting it in front of people and extolling its virtues. And I've told Jason this many times, but, my greatest aspiration in building this business together is that someday I can be in a dark room just writing software all day and let other people handle a lot of things, right? But I understand right now too that, again, as nerdy as it sounds, I'm really passionate about this idea of moving boxes, and I understand it well enough that I can go out and speak to people. So like you said,
that's going to sell way more than being good at sales,
Sure. Well, I hope so. I hope that's true.
I'm sure that if we, Court has an extensive background in sales. I also come from sales. I'm sure that if we tried to sell your product and we did a competition, you tried to sell it, we tried to sell it, you would sell a lot more than us because of that passion and the financial alignment. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what you guys are going to build.
I'm so curious. You're starting a company, and your end goal is to sit in a basement in a dark room, coding.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you see a day where you're head of product and you appoint another CEO?
Yeah, very likely. Yeah, I'm already looking at that path as I'm excited about the opportunity to run this company when it's relatively small. But, bringing my age into the equation here too, I mean, I recognize that when we
You're so freaking young, by the way. Both of you guys
Yeah.
are so
We're in
young.
our
You both-
mid-40s.
You're talking
mentioned-
about it like you're.
Both mentioned
Well, look, okay, we're not.
and you bring so much experience
Well, I
and
tell you,
all this knowledge. No one else, like, you couldn't have done this if you were 25 years younger because you wouldn't have your experience
No,
in the
it's
space.
exactly
Like,
right.
you guys are going, you're perfectly positioned to do this. It's only an
There-
advantage.
There are days I feel older than mid-40s.
Amen to that. But no, and to that point, I mean, yes, we're not super old. We've got a lot of years left to focus on this and have fun with it. But yeah, I recognize too that I can invest time in learning all the skills to be the CEO of a larger company, or I can invest my time in doing things that I really love. And so when we get the company to the point where it will operate with someone else other than me as the CEO, that's really where I want to be. That to me is success for our business, that I don't have to be the guy calling the shots all the time, that I can be a product development leader, that I can be involved in the sales side of things and not have to be concerned with all of those other administrative aspects of the business that a CEO gets tied up in all the time.
One interesting thing I think is there's levels of ambition, right? There's people who come in to stuff and they want to build $1 billion company, right? They want to be like in charge of something huge and powerful and stuff. And I think our ambitions are smaller than that, and that's fine, right? Mm-hmm. We've got our level of ambition that we want to get to, and I think we're both pretty in line with what that means exactly, which is a nice part about us being friends for so long. Is it's really clear to both of us what we're looking to get out of this process, and we're both aligned on what that means. And it's not to have $1 billion business, mm-hmm. but it is something that we want to be able to do because we're excited about, as I said before, writing our own stories and being able to take our own path and to get to a place where we're able to be proud of what we built.
Can I ask a question on that? I think we're going to leave on a tangent here, but we can come back. I love that you said that, and also earlier on, Aaron, you said when Court asked, "What are you guys excited about?" You said working with people that I love, people that I really like. When I was in college, I studied accounting, and I think in accounting 102 early on, I had a test, and the professor, the last question in the test was, under which circumstances should you do business with a family member or a friend? And then there were two answers. There are a few. It was a multiple choice, anyways. But the right answer was never. And I believed that for a long time. And for the past 2 years, I'm like, no, that's BS. I actually think there's no one that I'd rather make rich than my family and my friends. I think what a lot of people don't do is the necessary work prior in getting the contract right, all the expectations aligned, so you protect that relationship, right? So I'm very curious to hear, how are you guys going to protect this beautiful relationship that you have, friendship that you've had for so long in this venture, as you dive into this venture together?
Yeah, so early on, and this goes back to 2019 when we were forming the business, we spent a lot of time working together, and spent a ton of money back then getting an attorney who would represent the interests of the business and not necessarily us as individuals. And so we drafted our operating agreements and the articles of organization based around what our ideals were and the positions that we saw each other in. And I mean, again, Jason knew from those very earliest conversations that my biggest ambition was to work for him someday as a developer and just work as part of the team, right, and help drive product development that way. And so we were very deliberate about getting the business structure put together correctly, and again, spent a lot of money on legal fees, just making sure it was really structured to protect us individually and make sure that our families are also protected in the way that we structured things. So, just as an example in that, the way our operating agreement is structured, that if either of us were to die, there's a lot of messy stuff in marriage, and the spouse suddenly becomes an owner in the business, and so we accounted for that up front, and so our spouse would never become a partner in the business. But the operating agreement also states very clearly that the ownership shares have to be sold within a defined period of time. If if I'm not in a position, or if he's not in a position to buy out those shares, they have to be sold, and the money has to be given to the surviving family. So that's just built into the operating agreement for the business. And so while Jason would never inherit my wife as a business partner, she would be well taken care of in the event that I were to meet an untimely death. Jason pushes me off a building or something, whatever it is. So, but we had to be really deliberate about that, and we talked about it for a long time before we signed anything.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense to write those things up and make sure they're set. We've got some eventualities in these contracts for if we ever get in a huge fight and end up not being friends anymore, and don't want to do this. And I don't think there's very small chance of that happening, but I think it is smart to write that up and make sure that it's in there, so that it's all written up and set. But I get what they're saying when they talk about saying don't bring your family and friends in, because there's so much history in that, and the family, you can't just suddenly not deal with your family anymore, right?
Yeah.
So if rough things happen in the business, that could affect your family a lot. I don't know, man. We've been friends for a long time. I just kind of trust him, and I think that that is going to be a benefit for the way that we work together. Is that I trust that he's going to do what's right for the business and what's right for the two of us, and
I love that. It is so hard to find and work with people that you can close your eyes and just trust completely, and that's kind of it happens to exist in a relationship like that. And I love to hear that you guys have done all the work to protect that relationship, because man, I for example, I love working with Court. We're good friends, and a lot of people might look at it and say, oh, they're lucky to work together. But before I stepped in as a CEO, I kid you not, we spent, I don't know, at least 60 hours just reading, putting that contract together, putting that agreement together. I don't know if I'm just kind of guesstimating that, but just doing the necessary work to protect that thing that you cherish so much. And I think you're right. Like that, once you're up and running, there's just so much trust. You just save so much time from writing memos about everything that you're talking about, right? You just can close your eyes and run together, and that just you get there faster, right?
I think diversity in a startup is a crappy strategy. Work with people that think like you, that you've operated with, that you don't have to say things 2 or 3 or 4 times and wonder if they understand what you're saying. Diversity is a great strategy once you're big, but you just need to get this off the ground, and you don't have time to re-explain yourself.
Yeah, and the honesty that we can have with each other, I think, is really useful too. Like I can say, Aaron, the things you're saying don't make any sense. You sound like a crazy person right now. And he understands, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
And he can say equally mean things to me. And
I don't even take it that way, honestly. And so that's not just hypothetical, right? That's actually happened already in our brief lifespan of doing this. Because I've got lofty ideals, and I tend to, I don't know, maybe give too much of the benefit of the doubt to situations, to other people, and so Jason has been really good at reining me in and be like, no, this is what's real right now. And he's like, I know this is the ideal for you. He's like, but we can't make our house payments on ideals, right? Things have to be concrete. They have to make sense. And that's something that one of my current business partners says a lot too, is things have to make sense, right? And of course that's true. They have to make sense. Some people would say that what we're doing doesn't make sense, but to us it does. It makes sense. And but yeah, I've really relied on Jason a lot in just the last couple of months to make sure that I'm focused on what's real. What can we really do? And, hey, we can't bring this developer in. Yes, we're dealing with an impossible workload right now, but we can't bring in another developer right now because there's no capital to pay him, right? And so we have to continue to kind of bootstrap and just be scrappy about the way we're doing things. But I lose sight of that, and he reminds me, so it's good.
Love it.
Sounds like you have a good visionary integrator relationship. Visionaries, high thinking integrators, boots on the ground. Hey, we're going to take your vision and make sure that this actually pencils.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, what are you guys most nervous about? What's keeping you guys up at night?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's a lot of those boots to the ground type questions, right? Like, as we're trying to build stuff, where's the next thing coming from? What are we putting our time into the right things? And a lot of these questions, I think, will just answer themselves as we keep working. But yeah, there's a lot of that where I'm trying to understand, like, what's the next step? What do we need to do tomorrow? What do we need to do the next day? And what's going to keep us on the high level path that we've defined, but what's going to keep us on that for the next week, the next month, the next year?
I love the book, The One Thing. The question is, what's the one thing you can do that by so doing everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? Now you don't need to read the book.
Nice.
Jason and Aaron, for you guys, what's the one thing that you need to do, Jason, over the next quarter that makes everything else easier or unnecessary?
Oh, man.
So for my part in building this and recognizing that a lot of my activities are the initial revenue drivers for the business, right? Being out and selling, that is the one thing that I have to be focused on. And I have, a goal to reach out to no fewer than 5 companies every day to start this process, right? And a lot of it is just cold calls. It's contacting people on LinkedIn and trying to establish these early relationships. I'm also leveraging a lot of the existing relationships that I have. I've mentioned.
Explain real fast what a buying group is. That's
Okay.
super uncommon phrase. It's very
Sure.
common in your realm,
Yeah, it is.
uncommon in the rest.
Yeah, so buying groups are groups of distribution companies that basically pool their resources to leverage buying power. And so they'll go to a manufacturer and say, hey, we've got this group, we want to do this private label, and you're going to make it for us, and this is the volume that you can expect from that. And so they're basically leveraging the group as a whole to increase their buying power.
Got it.
And so I'm working with a number of different buying groups that are in the distribution space, relationships that I've had from the past, and going to these people who know me already and using this. So like we put a sales incentive program together where I'm deputizing the sales force of these large wholesale companies that are in the distribution space. And so their salespeople get both a little upfront, if they can arrange an introductory meeting with a decision maker within a distribution business, and that person keeps the meeting, then they make, and it's really kind of a token, I'll call it a commission. It's a sales incentive. And it's not huge, but it's enough to incentivize them to have a very simple conversation with the people they're already dealing with. But the big deal for us is if we close a deal, whether it's doing consulting work for them first before we get to software development, or it's straight into custom software, those salespeople get a commission. And it's a healthy commission for basically lining up a phone call that turns into a meeting that turns into a project. So, they'll make up to 10% of the down payment on a project. And, if it's a $50,000 down payment on a software project, they made $5,000 for a phone call. Right. And so I've just barely started rolling this program out to some of the salespeople that I know. We don't have any meetings lined up yet, but I think the incentive is very appealing to them. And they're simple conversations because they're already dealing with those people, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a great way for me to deputize and just extend the reach super fast, right? Because there are literally hundreds of those people that I know that I worked with in the past, and now they can all be a sales force. So that also spares me a little bit of having to do the cold call stuff because they're making those warm intros. And now I'm in a space where it's like, oh yeah, I know this person. I'm comfortable and I can talk to them easily about what it is we're building. So I think that's kind of a unique approach too, because I'm not really trying to approach this from the technology standpoint. And hey, look at this awesome tech we have, and you don't know us from Adam, right? But it's let's just talk about your business. Let's talk about your pain points. And we'll get to the software conversations later on. So we know that extends the, kind of the life cycle of closing some of those deals, but it becomes a much easier sell when they trust that I know what I'm talking about, right? That it's not a one-time phone conversation or even multiple calls where I'm trying to convince them to buy something that they don't recognize the need for yet. So maybe it's a little bit of a unique approach in the sales process. And again, it's a longer process, right? We're not going to close things quite as fast, but I think that's going to help us to establish a lot of really solid relationships before we start talking about what they should be spending their money on with us.
I love the consulting first and then software leave behind, because it's such a good way to build trust and cash flow the business until you do the software project.
Yeah, that's the idea.
I think that's such a winning formula.
And it's not a hard sell for you. That's stuff that you enjoy doing anyway. You like doing the consulting part of it. He's got a lot of, relationships with places where he's already done consulting, and so that's, I think, a huge win for our company. Absolutely.
I got super nervous when I said, what are you going to have to do differently from a CTO to a CEO? And you said, well, I'm going to have to do some bookkeeping and balance the books and write some checks. Please do not write a single check or spend 1 hour in your journey balancing books or doing any accounting. I have a bookkeeper for you. But you will be giving somebody a job that loves doing that every single day. And got super stoked when you said, yeah, I'm going to make 5 calls every single day. I have to be having these conversations. It's founder-led sales. I think that's the most important thing at any stage. Well, at this stage of a company, for sure.
If you got a good bookkeeper for me, I've already told Jason that the first hire will be somebody to manage the books, because I hate it. Hate it.
When Carlos came on, 2 years later, Carlos moved to Brazil, and I was like, bro, I can't lose you. We need to keep working together. And I think you kind of felt the same. You wanted to keep working. But Carlos, after being there for 2 or 3 months, and it was working with him being remote, he said, hey, bro, I hired my little brother to do some work. And
$2 an hour.
he did a good job. We pay our people overseas more than that now.
Yeah, for sure. Disclaimer.
Yeah.
Speaking of working with family and having bad blood.
He had just gotten out of high school, wasn't doing anything, and
He didn't speak any English at
he
that
didn't
point
speak.
either.
Yeah, no English.
Now he speaks Japanese and English. But 60 of our 80 people are in 12 different countries, and they work for a third of the price that we could find them here and do a phenomenal job. And it's elevating them. They're elevating the business. So, yes, we have plenty of people that would love to do bookkeeping for you that are highly qualified and capable. So you do not have to spend any time on
Definitely want to talk to them. That's great.
So I have an answer for that question that you asked earlier. What was the question? How do you move
How do you bring a latent pain into a current pain and make it bad enough so that you're spurred to action?
So I don't know if this is the perfect answer, but I did some soul searching right now, and I actually was in a conversation with a couple of friends a week ago, and I had just learned about this concept of the 6 working geniuses. I don't know if you guys have heard of them. It's by the same guy who wrote 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. He identified there's 6 things that you can be good at. You're usually really good at 2 of them, and you find some other ones that are just you are relatively good at it. You're good enough to do. But to get any type of work or project completed, you need those competencies. You need those 6. They call it working geniuses. And then one of them is wonder. The other one is creation. The other one is discernment, tenacity, galvanizing, and
There's one more. We'll put it in.
there's one more.
in the
Anyways,
comments.
yeah. So I left that conversation like I am definitely discernment and tenacity, like for sure. Like I had self-diagnosed, just this is who I am. So I'm talking to some friends. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna take the test, but I'm these 2, and this person that works with me said, no, you are totally wonder. Like you spend a lot of time in your head. Like you come to a lot of meetings, or you have some ideas that I have never thought of, and I'm dealing with this problem every day. And I present a problem to you. You come to me a week later with all of these ideas. You live in wonder. And then I think to answer that question, I think that's what I do. I spend a lot of time. I make time. Sometimes I actually put time on my calendar to think. And when you think, you create different, alternative realities of what you currently, the problems you're currently having, what life could be like, what the business could be like. And I feel like I just think so much that I end up living in these alternative realities and finding that this could be much better. And I end up bringing that, pain forward, and decide to make those changes instantly instead of letting those things happen. So it's definitely not the answer I expected to give or that I think anyone would hope to hear. But just I feel like as leaders, we don't take enough time to think, or as founders, or just managers or entrepreneurs, to actually just stop, maybe close your eyes or just look at nothing and just think and create in your head. I think if we did that, we would all be better off.
That's interesting. I'm not wonder. I am discernment, and I hate these tests with boxes that say you are this or that. But I'm for sure it's easier for me to be discerning than it is to come up with an original idea. And I think I've had so many of my beneficial conversations. It's been cheating almost, right? To have conversations with people that are high wonder. Say, what if you did this or this or this or this or this? And then I can go through and discern and say, yeah, I think I want to do that idea. Guys, this went so fast, and we have so many more questions to ask you. I want to just get a glimpse of your childhood or earliest days of entrepreneurship, and then we're going to ask what advice you'd give to your earlier self. But I'm curious for you, Jason. Have you always been an entrepreneur?
No, I don't actually. Honestly, no. It's not something that I've always had this idea that sort of in the back of my head, like it'd be nice to be able to be my own boss and to write my own story. And I think so that's been there, but it's not something that I've really. I don't have any stories of me going out and trying to build a business at age 10 or anything like that. Yeah, for me, I think it's more about so I tend to have, I have a lot of creative outlets that I like to do. I like to write fiction stories. I like to play music, very musical family, grew up, playing a lot of music. And there's, I think, something about corporate jobs that stifles a lot of that creativity, that you're not really able to get in touch with that side of yourself when you're working at some of these, the 9-to-5 type of job. And so I think for me, it's more about having that freedom to do what I feel like I want to do, and to take that part of me and say, okay, I'm gonna take that creativity that I feel like I have, and I'm gonna use it for something that's mine, ours. And I'm going to, use that in the way that I want to, and create something that and I've said this already, but to create something that I'm proud of, that I can be like, yeah, this is something that we did, and we're proud of it, and it's something that is different from what I've been doing. So I think that's, for me, the biggest driver. Not so much I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Aaron?
I'm going to take a really wandering approach to answering this question, because I wanted to just mention a couple of things that really are they're important to kind of our relationship. So when Jason and I became friends way back in the 8th grade, we actually used to sit down and write stories together. So just the cheesiest little fiction stories.
Most ridiculous.
The most ridiculous stories.
Do you guys still have some of those?
Oh boy, we might have some of those sitting around on a hard drive somewhere.
It's possible.
Yeah.
So, but then when and this was a few years later, the internet really wasn't a thing yet. but there were these, lots of chat rooms and stuff that you could go to, and it was all dial-up internet, right? And we would get on these chat rooms pretty late at night, and we were writing a book together back and forth that was very technology oriented, and we would take turns writing chapters in the book, and we would just literally pass it back and forth and write this book together.
Cool.
And we did that for a long time. And then when we were in, I think, 9th grade, probably might have been 10th grade, we started working on our first software project together. And it was the Weasel database. Okay, it was super cool, right? It was kind of like a choose your own adventure that revolved around weasels. I mean, it was the dumbest thing, right? But it was the only time in my life when I have stayed up all night long to write software. And we did it.
That's the sort of sleepover we'd have.
It was.
Instead of staying up all
That
night
is
watching a movie or whatever, we'd be on the computer, either playing, StarCraft or whatever.
Right.
Or we'd be writing code.
Yeah, or stories. We did that too. So that was typically our sleepovers, and so that really helped to establish kind of our earliest working relationship. And so we found that balance when we were young in how we work together, right? And that we're really good with the back and forth. It started so early, and so that's really benefited our, where we are today. To say that I had, this, I mentioned that I had a kind of almost an inborn, I guess, entrepreneurial spirit, but I never really thought of myself being in this position until, I had that brief stint where I thought I'm going to do this back in 2009 with distribution inventory management, but that was a flash in the pan that I didn't do anything with at all. I basically registered the business, got the email address, and that was the extent of it. It never went anywhere. Then when we got together in 2019 and I was like, we're doing this, and no matter what, I'm calling it quits. We're going to jump in, go all in on this thing. Of course, it didn't play out until just last year in June, really, when we started jumping on this thing in earnest. And I made the decision to really move forward. And but it has been interesting to see those characteristics in myself just kind of reemerge, right? They were there when I was little. And like you were saying, it's just something that's there and you can't really get away from it, right? And some people say, they felt called to do it. I don't know if that's necessarily where I don't consider that the answer for me. And I don't know if we can succeed. But when I made that decision and felt a lot of peace around the decision to give notice at my current job, that was it. I had peace in the decision itself, but no concept of where this is going to go. And I know what we want to accomplish, and I have a vision of what that looks like. But I'm so excited about the prospect of building it to see what happens, right? And of course, we're going to put a lot of effort into it. I've chosen to walk away from a full-time job to make this thing happen. And so I do think it'll be successful. But if it doesn't succeed, I know that I'll have learned a lot in the process, right, of failure. And that's such a valuable teacher, as we know, right? You learn so much more from failure than you do from success. And that's not necessarily a lesson that I want to learn by failing, but I'm prepared also to learn those valuable lessons from failure. And we'll fail a lot along the way to success, right? And so we'll learn a ton of things. But anyway, I don't know if that answers the question or not, if I wandered so far off topic that I didn't answer it.
I love that answer. And I also, I've said this on other podcasts, I hate the notion that 95% of startups fail. 95% of founders quit. Yeah. And then the startup fails. But the company didn't fail. Like the founders just quit. And if you don't quit, then it's really hard to fail if you just don't stop once you get started. Curious what advice you'd have for earlier version of yourself, Jason. If you could be sitting across from a younger Jason, what's he going through, and what do you tell him?
Man, buy Bitcoin, I guess.
A lot of people say that.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't think I would tell him necessarily to change a lot. There's value in all these things. There's value in all the years. It'd be easy to just be like, yeah, I'd tell him to get on it sooner. But I don't know if necessarily that would have been the right thing. So I think I'd just say, work on yourself. Make sure that you're ready for when the time comes, and maybe I could prepare myself a little better than I have. But so maybe we could have got started a little earlier. But I think I'm pretty happy about how things are turning out, and I'm really excited.
Aaron?
So, I've listened to just about every episode of the podcast to this point, and I'm a super fan of the podcast for sure. I love what you guys are doing with this podcast. And every time you ask that question, I think really only one time has someone answered the question with, I wouldn't tell myself anything. I would never want to give my younger self advice. I think my younger self was open to hearing advice from people, and a lot of naysayers too, who said, don't do that. It's a bad idea, right? But I don't want to influence the experiences that I've had to this point, right? Because I don't think that I would be prepared with the experiences that I have now. It's the grandfather paradox, and you're big into, astrophysics and stuff right now. So it's true. I think from that perspective, it is like the grandfather paradox, that I could go back and give myself some advice, and it would change the trajectory of things. And I may not end up where I am today if I had given myself that. I wasn't prepared. I didn't have the relationships then that I do now. And if I had changed that trajectory back then, they may not have materialized, right?
Now, to be fair, I would have a lot of advice for your younger self.
We should definitely start asking that.
What would you have told him?
No, we won't get into it.
I would have said, don't waste your time with that girl. No.
I'm sure you did say that.
I don't know if I did. He said that to me plenty, for sure. For sure. We had that conversation on multiple occasions, actually.
Yeah, high school is rough.
High school is rough. High school is rough.
So you'd sit across from your younger version of yourself, and
I would actually avoid sitting across from my younger
wouldn't
self
even-
altogether.
you
Yeah,
wouldn't
I really,
do that.
I would. I mean, the grandfather paradox to me is the thing, right? Absolutely no contact with your prior self.
got it.
To avoid influencing yourself that would, potentially change that trajectory. And of course, that's all hypothetical, right? Since we can't actually do that.
I
But
wish everyone could have seen the DeLorean you pulled up in.
yeah. I've already been back in time and given my younger self some advice now, and that's kind of how I think about things.
Well, guys, this has been amazing. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy lives, leaving your corporate jobs and starting your own company. It's been super inspiring, and we can't wait for whether it's a year from now or 3 years from now or 5 years from now to hear the next chapter.
Well, thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
We'll have you guys back for sure.